abandoned by her tribe for being a giant, until a tiny cowboy rescued her. Mara was born in a small, remote village surrounded by thick forests and wide-open plains. From the very beginning, she was different. Even as a baby, she seemed bigger than other children, with long arms and strong legs that made her family stare in surprise. At first, her parents smiled at her unusual size, thinking it was a blessing, a sign that she would grow up strong and capable. But as she grew, it became impossible to ignore. By the time she was 5, she could reach higher than any of the adults in the village. By the age of 10, she was taller than most of the grown women. Being different should have been exciting, but in Mara's village, it caused fear. The people of the tribe were traditional, living according to rules they had followed for generations. They valued strength, but only in ways that fit their idea of normal.
Anything outside of that was often met with suspicion. Mara's size made her stand out too much.
Children who had once played with her began to avoid her. Her classmates whispered behind her back, calling her the giant girl. Even when she tried to join games or help with chores, people stepped aside, afraid of what her strength could accidentally do. Mara felt lonely, even when surrounded by people. She could see the worry in her mother's eyes and the tension in her father's face when the village elders looked at her. No matter how hard she tried to be helpful, it seemed that every action was measured against her size. If she dropped a basket, even by accident, the villagers would shake their heads. If she spoke loudly, as children naturally do, they would cover their ears. Mara started to notice that her own family sometimes treated her differently, holding her back from certain tasks or trying to hide her from the public eye. As Mara entered her teenage years, the whispers grew louder and more serious. The elders began to talk about her in hushed tones, sometimes gathering in secret to discuss her. They said her size was unnatural, as if she did not belong. The villagers started blaming her for accidents and small misfortunes. When a goat wandered off or a fence broke, Mara's presence was mentioned. She had never hurt anyone intentionally, but the fear surrounding her made the people's eyes turn cold. Mara began to feel the weight of their judgment like a heavy chain around her heart. One morning, Mara woke up to find a strange tension in the village. The air was thick, and even the birds seemed quieter than usual. She noticed the elders standing together near the central fire, their faces serious. Mara approached cautiously, hoping that today would be different, hoping they might finally see that she was no threat. But as she drew closer, she could hear snippets of conversation. Words like danger, curse, and cannot stay reached her ears. Her heart sank. Fear gripped her chest like icy fingers, and she knew in that moment that her worst nightmare was coming true.
The elders called Mara to the center of the village.
Her parents were silent, looking down at the ground. Mara's stomach twisted in knots, but she tried to stay calm. "Mara," the chief began, his voice steady but heavy. "You are not like the rest of us. Your size, your strength, it frightens the people. We cannot allow you to remain here any longer."
Mara could not believe what she was hearing. "You want me to leave?" she asked, her voice shaking.
But this is my home. My family, my friends." The chief shook his head. "It is not safe for you here, or for us. You must leave the village and survive on your own. Perhaps in the wild, you will find your path." Mara's mind spun. Leave? Alone? How could she survive without anyone to guide her? The forests were thick and wild, filled with animals she had only heard about in stories. The plains were wide and empty, with no one to protect her if she stumbled. But she also saw the certainty in the elders' faces. Their minds were made up, and arguing would only make them more convinced she was dangerous. That night, Mara packed a small bag with food, a blanket, and a few simple tools. Her parents said nothing. They could not meet her eyes, as if their shame or fear was too heavy to bear. Mara felt a deep sadness, a mix of grief and anger. She loved her village, but she could not stay where she was feared.
She knew she had to be brave, even if her heart ached. As she stepped out of the village for the first time alone, the cool night air hit her face.
The stars were bright above her, and for a moment she felt a strange sense of freedom. No one could tell her what to do. No one could stop her. She was finally in control of her own life, but the loneliness pressed in immediately. She could feel it in her bones, heavy and sharp. The sound of the village fading behind her made her feel small, even though her body towered over the shrubs and rocks around her. The first days were the hardest. Mara stumbled through forests, slept under trees, and hunted small animals for food. Her size, which had caused her so much trouble in the village, became both a blessing and a challenge. She could carry heavy logs to make a shelter and fight off wild animals that came too close. But she also made noise wherever she went. Every branch that snapped under her feet, every bird that flew away at her approach reminded her that she could never truly hide. Mara learned quickly that the wild had rules of its own. She had to find water, avoid dangerous animals, and make sure she stayed warm during cold nights. Some nights, she cried silently, wishing someone would come for her. She thought about her village, about the friends who had abandoned her, and the elders who had told her she was a curse. The pain of rejection was sharp, but it also made her stronger. She realized that if she wanted to survive, she had to trust herself and her own instincts. One morning, Mara was walking along a river when she spotted fresh tracks in the mud. They were small, careful, and oddly familiar. She crouched to examine them. They were human, but unlike her own footprints, these belonged to someone much smaller. For a moment, her heart leapt with hope. Could it be another traveler? Someone who would understand her. As she followed the tracks, she felt a mixture of curiosity and caution. Mara had learned the hard way that not everyone was kind. Some humans could be crueler than any wild animal. But something about these tracks made her feel different. They led her to a clearing where the sun shone brightly on a small figure tending to a tiny fire. The person was a young boy, small in size, with a wide-brimmed hat and careful movements. Mara froze, unsure how to approach him. He looked up, and their eyes met. The boy did not flinch. Pa, 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 pa. He did not step back. Instead, he smiled.
"Hello," he said simply. "You look like you could use some help." Mara was stunned.
How could someone so small be unafraid of her? How could he speak so calmly when she was huge compared to him? For a moment she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, she was not completely alone. She sat down across from him, careful not to scare him. He offered her some bread and water, which she accepted cautiously. They talked quietly, sharing stories of their lives. Mara told him about her village, the rejection, and the loneliness she had felt for so long. The boy listened without judgment, nodding and offering small words of comfort. For the first time since being abandoned, Mara felt that someone truly saw her, not as a threat, not as a giant, but as a person. As the sun began to set, Mara realized that the world, though harsh, had not completely turned against her. There were still kind souls, small yet brave, who could make a difference. And though she did not yet know what the future held, she knew that she had taken the first step toward a new life, one where she could survive, grow, and perhaps, one day, be truly accepted. Mara lay down that night under the stars, feeling the soft warmth of the fire nearby. For the first time in a long while, she slept without fear, knowing that help could come from the most unexpected places. Somewhere out there, the world was waiting for her. And though she was abandoned by her tribe, She had not given up. The morning sun rose slowly over the wild plains, spilling golden light over Mara's makeshift campsite. She awoke feeling rested but alert, her mind racing with questions. Who was the boy she had met last night? Why had he not been afraid of her size?
Mara had grown used to people stepping back, to whispers of fear following her wherever she went.
Yet this tiny cowboy had looked at her as if she were no different than anyone else.
She stood and stretched, feeling her muscles ache from the long walk and the hard night on the ground. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she needed to eat. The boy was already up, quietly tending the small fire that had kept them warm. Mara watched him for a moment, noticing how careful he moved, how even the smallest gesture seemed deliberate. Despite his size, there was a quiet strength about him, a confidence that Mara found strangely comforting. "Good morning," he said softly, without turning around.
Brown N. His voice was calm, steady, and strangely comforting.
"Good morning," Mara replied, her voice still hoarse from sleeping outdoors.
She approached him cautiously, not wanting to startle him. "Do you
Live around here?" The boy shook his head. "No."
I travel. My name is Eli.
I move from town to town, helping people when I can. And sometimes
"I help those who can't help themselves." He finally looked up at her, his small brown eyes bright and honest.
I think you might be one of them." Mara felt her heart tighten.
Help? After all she had been through, the thought of someone actually wanting to help her seemed almost impossible. I don't need anyone's help," she said, trying to sound brave, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her.
He glances around and Eli smiled faintly. "But the world can be tough, especially for someone like you. Sometimes, even the strongest need a hand." Mara studied him for a moment. He was so small, so fragile looking, and yet there was something about his presence that made her feel safe. Perhaps it was his calm confidence, the way he did not flinch at her size, the way he spoke as if he truly believed she could be strong without fear. Slowly, Mara nodded. "Maybe I could use a little help," she admitted quietly. Over the next few days, Mara and Eli traveled together. Eli taught her simple survival skills that Mara had never needed in her village, but now were essential in the wild. He showed her how to find clean water in streams, how to recognize edible plants, and how to move quietly through the forest to avoid dangerous animals. Mara was a quick learner, and her size often made tasks easier. She could carry heavy logs for shelter, lift rocks to clear a path, and even scare off smaller predators without a fight. Despite her strength, Mara found herself fascinated by Eli's bravery. He was so small, yet he faced the forest and its dangers with a confidence she admired. When they crossed rivers or climbed rocky hills, Eli moved carefully, always alert, always calm. Mara realized that courage was not about size, it was about heart. And Eli had a very big heart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they made camp near a small waterfall. Mara sat quietly, watching the water tumble over rocks, reflecting the orange and pink sky. Eli sat across from her, quietly sharpening a small knife he carried. Mara noticed how he paid attention to everything around him, always aware, always prepared. "Why are you helping me?" Mara asked suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. She had been carrying this question in her heart since the first day they met. You don't know me. I'm different."
"I've caused trouble everywhere I've been. Why would you care?"
"Because you're human, just like me. You deserve kindness, Mara. And Because I know what it's like to feel small in a big world. Maybe I'm small, but that doesn't mean I can't do something good.
Maybe helping you is my way of being strong, even if I don't look it.
Mara felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never been spoken to like that before. People had feared her, shunned her, or ignored her. Eli, though tiny, treated her as an equal. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, truly seen, and it was a feeling she could not forget. The days turned into weeks.
Mara and Eli learned to rely on each other in ways neither had expected. Mara's size and strength made her a natural protector, while Eli's careful planning and quick thinking often saved them from danger.
They hunted together, cooked together, and shared stories of their pasts. Mara told Eli about her village, about the fear and rejection she had faced, about the loneliness that had followed her like a shadow. Eli listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. One afternoon, while resting in a shaded grove, Mara spoke quietly, almost to herself.
I never thought anyone could understand what it's like to be different, to be too much for your own people.
And yet, here you are. You've never judged me.
You've never called me a giant in a mean way. You've only helped me.
Eli shrugged modestly. Maybe that's because I've been called too small, too weak, too little to matter.
We're not so different, you and I. People can be cruel when they don't understand.
But we don't have to be cruel to ourselves or to each other. Mara smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. She had not felt this way in years, not since she had been a small child, before the whispers and the fear had begun. She felt lighter somehow, as if a burden she had carried her whole life had begun to lift. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Mara found herself laughing again, not just quietly to herself, but with someone who made her feel safe. She told jokes and teased Eli gently, and he would grin and tease her back. For the first time, Mara realized that friendship, and perhaps even love, could exist in a world that had once seemed so hostile. But the wilderness was not always kind. Mara and Eli had to stay alert, especially near the edges of the plains, where hunters and travelers occasionally passed.
Mara. Worried about what would happen if someone from her village found her. Would they still fear her?
Would they try to drive her away again? Eli sensed her unease and took her hand gently, a small gesture that calmed her more than she expected.
Don't worry about them, Eli said softly. You're not alone anymore.
You have me, and you have yourself. You can face whatever comes, as long as you remember that. Mara nodded, feeling a courage she had never known before. She realized that survival was not just about strength or size, it was about trust, courage, and having someone who believed in you. Eli, small and fearless, had given her that gift. One evening, while gathering firewood, Mara heard distant voices. She froze, her instincts sharp.
The voices were human, and they carried a tone of urgency that made her heart pound. Could it be?
The villagers? She remembered the fear in their eyes, the anger, the rejection. The thought of facing them again made her stomach twist.
Eli noticed her sudden stillness and whispered, "What is it?"
Voices, I think. I think they're from my village.
They might be looking for me.
Eli did not panic. He looked at Mara calmly.
Then we stay alert.
We don't run unless we have to. You're stronger than you think, and I'll be right here with you. Mara took a deep breath, feeling both fear and determination. She realized that the journey ahead would not be easy. Her past was catching up to her, but she was no longer alone. She had Eli by her side, and she had herself. Together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. That night, Mara lay by the fire, her thoughts racing.
He remembered the first night she had slept alone in the wilderness, terrified and abandoned. Now, beside her, Eli slept soundly, a small but powerful presence that made her feel safe. The called friendship could grow in the most unlikely places. And as she drifted to sleep under the stars, Mara felt a small flicker of hope for the first time in years. A hope that perhaps someday she would find a place where she truly belonged. The morning air was crisp and cool as Mara awoke to the soft sounds of birdsong. Eli was already awake, tending to the small fire they had built the night before. He moved quietly and carefully, just as he always did, making sure the fire did not get too large and draw attention.
Mara stretched and looked around, scanning the horizon.
In the distance, she saw the faint shimmer of movement. People walking, their shapes just barely visible through the morning haze. Her heart skipped a beat! The village! It had taken weeks to reach this remote part of the wilderness, and yet here they were. Her past had found her. Fear surged through her chest, but beneath it, a spark of resolve began to grow. She was not the same girl who had been abandoned. She was stronger, wiser, and she had someone she could trust by her side. Eli noticed the tension in her posture. "What is it?" he asked, his voice calm, steady, as always. "They're coming," Mara said quietly, pointing toward the distant figures. "My village. They found us." Ellie nodded. "Then we prepare. We stay hidden and watch." "You're stronger than they are afraid of, Mara." "And you don't have to face them alone." Mara took a deep breath and nodded. For the first time, she felt a sense of purpose. She was not running anymore. She would face this moment with courage, and she would do it on her terms. Over the next few hours, Mara and Eli moved carefully through the forest, staying low and using the trees and rocks as cover. Mara had learned much from Eli about moving quietly, about reading the signs of the land, and about staying alert. Every sound, the snapping of a twig, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, told a story. Mara could feel her senses sharpening, her awareness growing. She was no longer just a girl running from fear. She was a force to be reckoned with, capable and ready. As they approached a clearing, Mara stopped and crouched behind a large boulder. Eli joined her, his small frame almost invisible beside her. Mara's heart pounded as she watched the figures in the distance grow clearer. She recognized the villagers immediately, the elders, some of her childhood friends, and even a few who had once been kind to her. Their expressions were a mixture of fear, determination, and confusion.
"They don't know what to expect," Mara whispered. "They think I'm dangerous." Eli nodded.
"Then we show them you're not. But carefully. We don't want anyone hurt." Mara looked at him, grateful for his wisdom and calm presence. He was small, but his courage matched her own in ways she had never expected. Together, they made a plan. Mara would stay hidden for now, observing her village and understanding their fears. Eli would remain beside her, offering guidance and support. Hours passed as Mara watched. The villagers searched the area cautiously, calling her name, their voices tinged with anxiety and frustration. Mara could see the hesitation in their movements, the uncertainty in their eyes. They were afraid, but they were also looking for answers. Mara realized that fear had ruled their actions for so long, and now it was time for understanding to take its place. As evening approached, Mara decided it was time to make her presence known. Not with anger, not with force, but with strength and calm. She stepped into the clearing, her tall frame silhouetted against the setting sun. The villagers froze, their eyes wide with shock and fear. Some gasped, others whispered, and a few took cautious steps back. Mara took a deep breath. "I am Mara," she said, her voice strong and steady. "I am not a curse."
I am not a threat. I am the same person you knew once, only stronger and wiser.
I have survived because I had to. I have learned to be brave, to be careful, and to be responsible.
I have not come here to fight you, but to show you that fear does not define me.
The village elders looked at her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty.
They had never seen her stand so tall, so confident. Mara's words, her presence, and the calm strength she radiated began to break down the fear that had ruled their hearts for so long.
One of the elders, an older woman who had been kind to Mara as a child, stepped forward cautiously.
Mara!
We were wrong, she said, her voice trembling. We feared what we did not understand. We thought your size was dangerous, but we see now we were mistaken. Mara felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that someone was beginning to understand, but sorrow for all the years of rejection and loneliness. She nodded slowly. "I forgive you," she said softly. "Not because I owe you forgiveness, but because holding on to anger would not help anyone. I have learned to survive, and now I want to help, if you let me." The villagers murmured among themselves. Some nodded hesitantly, while others remained cautious. Mara knew that acceptance would not come all at once, that it would take time for them to truly see her as she was. But this was a start, a small but meaningful step toward healing the wounds of the past. Eli watched from beside her, his small hand resting lightly on her arm. Mara glanced at him and smiled. His courage, his kindness, and his unwavering support had brought her to this moment. Together they had faced the wilderness, learned to survive, and now they faced the most important challenge of all, confronting the past and reclaiming her place in the world. As night fell, Mara and Eli camped near the edge of the village, their fire small and careful. Mara lay down, her mind racing with thoughts of the day. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. She had faced her village, her past, and her own doubts, and she had not faltered. Eli sat nearby, keeping watch, as he always did. Mara felt a deep sense of gratitude for him. He had shown her that strength was not just in size, but in heart, in courage, and in loyalty. She realized that the bond they shared was more powerful than any fear, more enduring than any obstacle. The next morning, Mara and Eli began to work with the villagers, helping them with tasks that had once seemed impossible. Mara lifted heavy logs to repair fences, helped move supplies, and even assisted in protecting the village from minor threats. The villagers watched, their fear slowly giving way to respect. They began to see Mara not as a threat, but as an ally, someone who could help them in ways they had never imagined. Mara felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. She realized that her strength, her size, and her experiences had all prepared her for this moment. She was no longer just surviving. She was contributing, helping, and building trust.
And, with Eli by her side, she knew that she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Yet, even as progress was made, Mara remained vigilant.
She knew that fear and misunderstanding could return at any moment, and she was determined to be ready. She trained with Eli, practicing her skills, learning new ways to use her strength wisely, and developing a deeper understanding of herself.
She discovered that her size, once a source of shame, was now a gift, a tool she could use to protect and help others.
One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink,
Mara reflected on her journey.
She thought of the girl who had been abandoned, the lonely child who had wandered the wilderness, and the giant who had been feared. She realized how far she had come, not just in distance, but in heart and mind. Past. She had faced fear, loneliness, and rejection, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Eli joined her, his small hand resting gently on hers. "You've changed so much, Mara," he said softly. "You've grown in ways they will never understand."
But that's okay. What matters is that you know your own strength, and that you choose how to use it.
Mara smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. She knew that challenges would continue to come, that acceptance was a journey, not a destination. But she also knew that she was not alone, and that she had the courage, the strength, and the support she needed to face whatever lay ahead. And as the night settled over the village, Mara felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Hope for the future, hope for understanding, and hope for a life where she could finally be herself, strong, brave, and accepted. The morning light spilled across the village, warming the rooftops and glinting off the fields. Mara stood at the edge of the village, her tall figure casting a long shadow over the land she had once been forced to leave.
Beside her, Eli adjusted his small hat and surveyed the surroundings with a careful eye.
The village was awake and alive, but there was still tension in the air. Some villagers moved cautiously, still unsure of Mara, while others watched her with curiosity and wonder. Mara took a deep breath. Today was not just another day in the wilderness. Today was the day she would show her tribe that she was not a threat, that she had grown strong not to harm, but to protect and help.
Eli gave her a reassuring nod. "You're ready," he said quietly.
"Whatever happens, I'm with you." Mara felt a surge of courage. She had survived the wild, learned to trust herself, and formed a bond with Eli that gave her strength she had never known. She would face her tribe with honesty, with strength, and with patience. The first step was simple: show them her intentions clearly. She walked into the village, tall and calm, each step measured and deliberate. The villagers paused as she approached, unsure of how to react. Some stepped back instinctively, their fear still lingering. Others, especially the children and those who had known her as a child, looked at her with recognition and a hint of admiration. "I am Mara," she began, her voice steady and strong. "I have returned not to fight, not to scare, but to help."
"I have learned much since I left."
"I have faced the wild, I have faced fear, and I have learned to control my strength. I am here to protect this village, to aid those in need, and to prove that my size is not a curse, but a gift I can use wisely." The elders looked at her carefully, measuring her words and her presence. One of the older men, who had once been particularly fearful of her, stepped forward. "You speak with courage, Mara," he said slowly. "But words are not enough. You must show us that you are not only strong, but wise, that you can act for the good of the village." Mara nodded, understanding the challenge. She turned to Eli, who had been standing quietly by her side. He gave her a small, encouraging smile. "We can do this," he whispered. "I'll be with you." The first opportunity came quickly. A young child, playing near the edge of the village, wandered too close to a cliffside. The adults were frozen with fear, unsure how to act. Mara did not hesitate. She moved swiftly, her long legs carrying her to the child before disaster could strike. With careful hands, she scooped the child into her arms and carried him to safety. The villagers watched in awe, realizing that her size and strength could protect rather than harm. Next, Mara helped with the village chores, lifting heavy logs and repairing broken fences that had long been a challenge for the villagers. She worked alongside Eli, who moved skillfully among the villagers, offering guidance and encouragement. Together they showed that cooperation, trust, and courage could overcome fear and doubt. Mara's actions spoke louder than words, demonstrating her true intentions and her ability to use her strength responsibly. The villagers began to change. Fear slowly gave way to respect. They approached her with questions, asking how she had learned to survive, how she had grown so strong, and what she had experienced in the wilderness. Mara answered honestly, sharing her struggles, her loneliness, and the lessons she had learned. She spoke of courage, patience, and the importance of understanding rather than judging others. Eli watched quietly, proud of her. He had known Mara's potential from the beginning, and now the villagers were beginning to see it too. His presence, small but steadfast, reminded Mara that strength came in many forms. Courage was not only in size but in heart, in loyalty, and in the willingness to face fear with determination.
As the day went on, Mara felt a sense of accomplishment, but she also knew that acceptance would not come all at once. There were still villagers who watched her warily, hesitant to trust completely.
She understood their caution. Fear and misunderstanding were powerful, and she could not expect them to vanish immediately. But with each act of kindness and strength, she was building a foundation for trust and respect. Late in the afternoon, a sudden alarm rang out. A group of wild animals, drawn by the scent of livestock, approached the village from the nearby forest. Panic spread quickly. The villagers tried to drive the animals away, but their fear made them hesitant and unsure. Mara's heart raced, but she did not hesitate.
She turned to Eli. "We need to act, now," she shouted.
Eli nodded, moving quickly to help coordinate the villagers. Mara stepped forward, positioning herself between the animals and the village. Her tall frame and strong presence alone were enough to draw attention and caution from the animals. Using her strength and careful movements, she guided them away from the village, working in harmony with Eli and the villagers. Pastic. It was a delicate balance, requiring focus, patience, and courage. The villagers watched, their fear slowly transforming into amazement. They saw Mara's control, her wisdom, and her willingness to protect them, even in the face of danger. Children cheered from a safe distance, and some of the adults began to follow her lead, gaining confidence from her example. Together, Mara, Eli, and the villagers managed to drive the animals back into the forest without harm. After the danger had passed, the villagers approached Mara with a mixture of awe and gratitude. The elders who had once doubted her now looked at her with respect. "You have shown us today that fear was wrong," one elder said. "Your strength is a gift, and your courage is greater than any of us could have imagined. You have protected this village when we could not." Mara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced her fears, her past, and the doubts of her village, and she had emerged stronger and more confident. But she also knew that this was only the beginning. Acceptance was a journey, not a single moment. She would continue to prove herself, not through force, but through kindness, wisdom, and courage.
Eli joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder.
You did it, he said softly. You showed them who you really are.
You're not just strong, you're brave, kind, and wise. And they're finally beginning to see it too. Mara smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She had come a long way from the girl who had been abandoned, the girl who had wandered the wilderness alone. Now she stood tall, not just in size, but in heart and spirit. She had faced rejection, fear, and danger, and she had proven herself worthy of trust and respect. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Mara and Ellie walked through the village together, Children ran to greet her, and some of the villagers began to ask for her help with small tasks. Mara realized that she had not only reclaimed her place in the village, but she had also begun to build a new community, one based on understanding, trust, and cooperation.
That night Mara lay under the stars, reflecting on the day. She thought of the challenges she had faced, the fears she had overcome, and the courage she had discovered within herself.
She realized that strength was not just about size or power. It was about heart, determination, and the willingness to face fear with wisdom and patience. Eli lay beside her, small but steadfast, his presence a reminder of the bond they shared. Mara reached out and held his hand, feeling the comfort and strength it gave her. Together they had faced danger, confronted fear, and shown that courage and kindness could overcome misunderstanding and doubt. And as Mara drifted to sleep under the stars, she felt a deep sense of hope and purpose. She had proven herself to her tribe, protected those who had once feared her, and discovered a strength within herself that went far beyond size. She knew that challenges would continue to come, but she also knew that she was ready to face them, with Eli by her side and courage in her heart. The first light of morning fell gently over the village, painting the rooftops with soft gold and casting long shadows over the fields. Mara stood at the edge of the village, her tall figure strong and steady yet calm. For the first time in her life, she felt truly at peace here. The villagers were no longer strangers who feared her. They were people who had begun to understand her, to see her for who she really was. And Mara had learned that acceptance was not something demanded. It was something earned through courage, kindness, and patience.
Eli was beside her, his small frame almost dwarfed by her height, yet his presence was no less powerful.
Mara looked down at him and smiled. He had been her guide, her friend, and her companion through every trial, showing her that strength was not just in size, but in heart and loyalty. Together they had faced fear, danger, and rejection, and together they had grown stronger. That morning, Mara walked into the village center, where people were gathering to start their daily work. Children ran toward her, laughing and calling her name. Some of the adults looked at her with smiles instead of fear, while a few of the older villagers nodded respectfully. Mara's heart swelled with a quiet joy. She had come a long way from the lonely, abandoned girl who had wandered the wilderness weeks ago. Her first task of the day came suddenly. A small herd of goats had wandered too close to the river, and the current had grown strong after last night's rain.
Panic spread among the villagers. They rushed toward the riverbank, unsure how to retrieve the animals safely.
Mara's instincts kicked in immediately. She ran toward the water, her long legs carrying her swiftly across the terrain. She reached the edge of the river and carefully waded into the current, her strong arms guiding the frightened animals back to safety. The villagers watched in awe. The child who had once been too afraid to step near the water now cheered Mara's name. Some of the adults stepped forward to help, inspired by her bravery. Mara realized that her strength, once feared, was now a source of protection and hope. She felt a quiet pride, but also a deep humility. Strength, she knew now, was meant to be shared and used wisely, not to dominate or frighten others. After the goats were safe, Mara turned to Eli. "Thank you," she said softly. "I couldn't have done it without you."
You did all the hard work. I just kept watch. He winked, and Mara laughed, a sound that felt free and light.
The day continued with small acts of service. Mara helped prepare fences, carried heavy loads of firewood, and assisted the elders with tasks that required both strength and careful judgment. The villagers approached her cautiously at first, but their hesitation faded with every action she took. Mara answered their questions about her life in the wilderness, sharing her experiences honestly. She spoke of the dangers she had faced, the lessons she had learned, and the courage it took to survive. Through it all, Mara noticed the subtle changes in the villagers. Fear and suspicion gave way to curiosity, then respect. Some of the younger villagers, who had once avoided her, now sought her guidance and advice. Children ran to play near her, confident that she would protect them. Mara realized that her journey had not only been about survival, it had been about teaching others to see beyond appearances, to understand that courage and kindness were the truest measures of a person. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, a sudden commotion broke out near the edge of the village. A fire had started in the dry grass, quickly spreading toward the nearby homes. Smoke filled the air, and panic rippled through the villagers. Mara did not hesitate. She sprinted toward the flames, Eli close behind her, directing people to safety. Using her strength, she pulled logs and rocks to create a firebreak, guiding water from a nearby stream to douse the flames. Power, once feared, now became the key to saving the village. The villagers worked together under her direction, inspired by her courage and quick thinking. For the first time, Mara saw them not as fearful strangers, but as a community capable of working as one. Together they managed to control the fire, preventing damage to the homes and livestock. Exhausted but triumphant, Mara finally stepped back, her chest heaving with exertion, as the villagers cheered and clapped for her.
One of the elders approached Mara, his face full of awe and respect.
"You have saved us!" he said, his voice trembling. "Your strength, your courage, and your heart have protected this village. We were wrong to fear you. We see now that you are not a threat, but a gift." For years she had carried the weight of rejection and fear, wondering if she would ever belong. Now, in this moment, she understood that she had not only survived, but she had transformed the way her village saw her, and perhaps even how they saw themselves. Eli stepped forward, small but proud. "She's not just strong," he said. "Built. She's brave, kind, and wise. And she's not alone. I'm here, and I'll always be here to help." Mara smiled at him, feeling a warmth she had never known before. Eli's unwavering support had given her the courage to face every challenge, and together they had created a bond that could not be broken. The villagers gathered around Mara, offering thanks and gestures of friendship. Children held her hands. Adults smiled and nodded, and even the elders, who had once doubted her, now looked upon her with respect and gratitude.
Mara realized that acceptance was not about changing herself. It was about showing others her true self, with courage, honesty, and compassion.
That evening, Mara and Eli sat together by the river, watching the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and pink.
The village was calm and peaceful, the people moving about with a newfound sense of trust and cooperation. Mara reflected on her journey, the loneliness, the fear, the wilderness, and the moments of doubt. She had faced all of it and emerged stronger, not just in body but in heart and spirit. "I never imagined it would be like this," Mara said softly, her voice full of wonder. "I thought I would always be alone, feared by everyone. But now I see that strength can be a gift, and that even someone like me can belong." Eli smiled, his small hand resting on hers. "You've earned this, Mara. You faced every fear, every challenge, and every doubt. You've shown courage, patience, and kindness. And now you're home." Mara felt a deep sense of peace. For the first time, she no longer carried the weight of rejection or fear. She had proven herself, not through force, but through courage, wisdom, and compassion. She had faced danger, helped her village, and shown them the value of understanding and trust, and she had done it all alongside Ellie, whose loyalty and bravery had matched her own. As night fell, the village gathered for a small celebration. The children danced and laughed, the villagers shared stories and food, and Mara found herself smiling freely. Then she realized that her journey had not only changed her life, but it had also transformed the lives of those around her. Fear had been replaced with respect, doubt with trust, and loneliness with community. Mara stood in the center of the celebration, tall and strong, yet calm. and gentle. She looked around at the faces of the villagers, the people who had once feared her, now smiling, laughing, and welcoming her. She felt a sense of pride and gratitude. She had faced the wilderness, faced rejection, and faced danger, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Eli joined her, small but unwavering, and together they watched the celebration unfold. Mara realized that this was the life she had been searching for, not just survival, but belonging, purpose, and love. She no longer needed to hide, no longer needed to prove herself to anyone. She had earned her place not through fear or force, but through courage, kindness, and the strength of her heart. And as Mara lay down that night under the stars with Eli beside her, she felt a deep and lasting sense of hope.
The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led her to a place of acceptance, trust, and belonging.
She knew that challenges would continue to come, but she was ready to face them with courage, wisdom, and the unwavering support of her friend. For the first time in her life, Mara felt truly free. She had been abandoned, feared, and misunderstood, but she had found her place in the world. She had found acceptance, friendship, and the knowledge that strength is not measured by size alone, but by courage, heart, and the willingness to face life with honesty and kindness. And with Eli by her side, Mara knew that she would never be alone again. Together they had faced the wild, faced fear, and faced the past, and together they would continue to face the future. Strong, brave, and united.